Dozens of long-forgotten towns are scattered across northeastern Ohio. The canal era and railroad boom were responsible for most of these ghost towns. When the canal closed, railroads moved on and other cities grew. These bustling crossroads were abandoned. While some still exist as a scattering of houses, others have returned to the earth, leaving a few stone foundations in the woods. One such town, called Botzum, developed while the Ohio and Erie Canal was under construction in the late 1820s. It was located at the intersection of Bath and Riverview Roads, 6 miles north of downtown Akron in the former township of Northampton, now a part of Cuyahoga Falls. Originally called Yellow Creek Basin, the town eventually included a hotel, a general store, a tavern, a post office, a school, a train station, a cemetery, a covered bridge, a blacksmith shop, a sawmill, a grist mill, a boatyard, 2 warehouses, and a dozen homes. At its height, the population reached 40 residents. A warehouse and store were first built by Nathaniel Hardy in 1825, near where Yellow Creek meets the Cuyahoga River. Hardy had helped build the canal before settling the area, and he erected a hotel and tavern for canal laborers and travelers. The town, which soon became known as Niles, had a tough reputation. Brawls often erupted when canal workers got drunk at the tavern, and horse thieves and counterfeiters lurked in the woods. Nicholas Botzum and Thomas Owen ran rival mercantile establishments, each occupying opposite sides of the canal. On the spillway for wastewater from the canal north of town, 2 sawmills were built to manufacture lumber for use in Cleveland. A post office was established in 1866, and the Valley Railway established a station there in 1880. The post office and station were called Buckeye until 1893, when the town's name was changed to Botzum. John Botzum, the namesake, was one of the early settlers of the region. Originally from Germany, Botzum had moved his wife and 9 children to the United States in 1836, where their last child, Conrad, was born that same year. They settled in Niles in the late 1830s. His family prospered and gradually purchased the majority of the land in the area. In 1922, the Botzum family sold 800 acres to Akron for construction of a sewage treatment plant. Upon completion of the facility, the city tore down the laborers' shacks, along with several of the nearby abandoned town buildings. The 100-year-old covered bridge was destroyed 10 years later after an overloaded truck attempted to cross. The remaining buildings were torn down or left to decay. Some worn boards, a few foundations, and weathered cornerstones and steps are all that is left of the town, scattered among the flowers and hedges of ghostly homestead gardens. The Conrad Botzum Farmstead, now restored by a nonprofit organization, is one of the last standing reminders of the village. The villagers who didn't move away remain buried at the town burial ground. Botzum, or also referred to as Yellow Creek, Cemetery, stands on a hill west of the village along Yellow Creek Road. This pioneer cemetery contains about 175 graves, although some accounts list 300 burials. Fewer than a handful of headstones remain visible. The oldest stone remembered, according to the Northampton Historical Society, is that of an 84-year-old woman who died in 1779. Most of the burials took place in 1836, a particularly brutal winter that cost the lives of many of the town's children. Over the last 100 years, many of the sandstone and marble markers were knocked over by grazing cows, damaged by vandals, or destroyed by the Ohio weather. The graves of the Botzum family, along with many other influential villagers, stand forgotten. Among those missing tombstones is a murder victim, forgotten by time but still seeking answers. Botzum was the scene of a fatal tragedy in 1882. In the rough-and-tumble canal town, the quiet autumn serenity was shattered when a tale of murder and grave robbing was born. John Tedrow was a pleasant and well-liked young man in his late 20s who had lived in the fertile valley north of Akron for several years, working as a farmhand at whatever homesteads he could find employment. He was biracial, tall, and muscular from years of hard labor. The son of a house slave, John was a good worker who knew the value of a job well done. John Tedrow's work ethic earned him a good reputation as a hired hand. This all changed, however, every time he reached for a bottle of alcohol, one of his favorite leisure activities. When intoxicated, Tedrow was very unstable and ready for a fight. On the night of Friday, October 27th, the hotel beside the Cuyahoga River in Botzum was the scene of a benefit dance hosted by the Buckeye Band, a music group headquartered in a first-floor room at the hotel and composed of young men from Botzum and neighboring villages. The event attracted a local crowd of about 40 teenagers and young adults to the second-floor ballroom. Among the many guests was Thomas Brooke, a 24-year-old from England, who was courting Ellen Thomas, the 22-year-old daughter of the hotel's middle-aged owner, Seth M. Thomas. Earlier that afternoon, Tedrow, along with one of his friends, had spent some time in Akron. By the time the two men caught the evening train back to town, Tedrow was a bit tipsy. The two companions ate supper at the hotel before heading over to the nearby saloon, where they continued to drink heavily. When they returned to the front steps of the hotel, the dance was well underway, and a few guests lingered on the porch. In a fit of drunken rage, Tedrow grabbed hold of Seth Thomas and started pushing him around, knocking him off the porch. Tedrow then turned his attention to Thomas Brooke. He jumped at Thomas and somehow managed to tear the boy's suit jacket. Staggering into the upstairs ballroom, John Tedrow reportedly unleashed a flood of foul language and threatened the young crowd. Most of the attendees ignored his outburst and didn't allow the ranting to ruin their fun evening. After saying his piece, Tedrow and several of his friends left for the saloon once again. Meanwhile, Thomas Brooke went into the kitchen and sent Seth's son, 16-year-old Charles Thomas, up to the ballroom to fetch his sister, Ellen Thomas, and her friend Mabel Gray to come down and repair his badly torn jacket. After sewing up the damage, Thomas, Ellen, Charles, and Mabel decided to head back to the dance. As they passed into the hall shortly before midnight, they heard noises coming from the room used for rehearsals by the Buckeye Band. Brooke thought that Tedrow must have come back. He rushed through the washroom and headed toward the band room in case Mr. Thomas needed any help fending off Tedrow. Before he had even reached the band room door, Seth Thomas burst through it and rushed past, pursued by a drunken, enraged Tedrow. When Tedrow came face to face with Brooke, he seized the Englishman by his collar and began to yank and push him around. Ellen hurried over to the commotion and pinned herself between her boyfriend and Tedrow. She put her hands on Tedrow's cheeks, looked anxiously into his eyes, and said, "John, what do you mean? Do you know where you are?" As Ellen stood holding his face, an axe fell and struck Tedrow on the side of the head, dropping him instantly to the ground. He was dead by the time his body hit the floor. The incident brought the dance to an abrupt end. Thomas Lancaster accompanied Thomas Brooke on a wagon ride to Akron. There on Market Street, close to 3 a.m., they found a police officer named David K. Bunn. Brooke placed himself in the custody of Officer Bunn and, at Brooke's request, was taken to the home of respected lawyer and Civil War veteran General Alvin C. Voris on Fur Street. After a brief discussion of the events in Botzum, General Voris sent Thomas Brooke to Akron Jail.